Well, thank you very much, Shelby, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to our latest webinar series. My name is Ryan Silva. I serve as Executive Director of the New York State Economic Development Council, and today's webinar is about how immigrant and refugee populations can support our downtown revitalization efforts. Today is this week is ironically National Welcoming Week, so I have the opportunity to welcome everybody today. But this week is a week in which organizations and communities bring together neighbors of all backgrounds to build strong connections and affirm the importance of welcoming and inclusive places in achieving collective prosperity. The New York State Department of State has seen a tremendous overlap between refugee and immigrant services that they are supporting, along with the Office for New Americans and community revitalization efforts through the Department of State's DRI and downtown revitalization initiatives. Today, representatives for the private and public sectors will be discussing how refugees and immigrants contribute to New York State's efforts to create vibrant, diverse downtowns, and conversely, how the DRI helps create and support welcoming communities for new Americans. Before I turn it over to today's speakers, I do want to just talk a little bit about the New York State Economic Development Council. We are a private non-for-profit membership association, and we serve all parts of New York State, providing advocacy, education, and policy development. So from the western point of New York and the Buffalo region to the eastern tip of Long Island and everywhere in between, our members are on a day-to-day basis providing economic development services to the communities they serve. And economic development in that definition has really evolved and changed from your traditional industry attraction, create a project and create jobs, retain jobs, to really building holistic and sustainable economies. And one of the things we're really trying to focus on here at the New York State EDC is how do we bring communities and partners together? How do we break down those traditional silos and recognize and understand that downtown revitalization is economic development, workforce development is economic development, infrastructure build out and achieving the state's clean energy goals is economic development. And how do we bring partners together to help lead to better outcomes in every city, town, village, county, and part of the great state of New York? And that's really what today's webinar is about, is providing examples and case studies and best practices. So real quickly, a little bit of run a show. As you all probably saw, this webinar will be recorded and will also be emailed out to anyone who registered to attend this event after the presentation. We will also be posting this webinar on the New York State EDC website. It'll be also distributed throughout our newsletter. If anyone has any questions, we will take them at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to utilize the features, the chat and Q&A to provide those questions. We will try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. And if not, we will try to provide an opportunity for additional follow-up. With that, I think everyone's heard enough of my speaking. Now it's time to turn it over to our experts. I'm going to introduce each of our guests, and then I'm going to turn it over to my friend Keisha. Our first speaker will be Keisha Santiago, Deputy Secretary of State for Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure with the New York State Department of State. We have Dr. Laura Gonzalez Murphy, Executive Director of the Office for New Americans, New York State's Department of State. We have the great Mayor Robert Palmieri from the great city of Utica in New York in Oneida County. Shelley Callahan is the Executive Director of the Center for Refugees, formerly the Mohawk Valley Resource Center for Refugees in Utica, New York. We have Olivia Heibach, Welcoming America, a national organization aimed at building a welcoming society where every person, including immigrants, can fully contribute and shape our shared prosperity. And Zachary Asolo, job coach, Interfaith Works of Central New York, and ONA-supported refugee resettlement program. With that, Keisha, I'm going to turn it over to you. It is so good to see you once again, and such an honor and a privilege to be hosting you and our partners at the Department of State for another webinar.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you so much, EDC, for your partnership. It really has been a great way that we've been able to wrap together so many of the topics that really do feed into economic development to provide that broader perspective. So thank you so much for your partnership. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to participate in a webinar on such an important, timely, and burgeoning topic. the confluence of downtown vibrancy, particularly through our Downtown Revitalization Initiative and immigrant resettlement services provided by the Department of State's Office for New Americans. My colleague, Deputy Secretary Zoila Del Castillo, and I have been collaborating on ways to better coordinate our office's mission. And it is with the formidable leadership of Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez that we're able to bring you all here virtually for today's discussion, also in partnership with EDC. I'm also pleased to be presenting beside Dr. Laura Gonzalez Murphy, the Director of the Office of New Americans. Our joint partnership is an indication of the many ways that our two offices are collaborating to maximize positive, equitable outcomes for the communities we both serve. Diversity is a key component of a vibrant, prosperous downtown. Diversity of housing options, diversity of incomes, diversity of cultures, practices, religions, food, and ethnic backgrounds. This guiding principle compels us to be as inclusive as possible in our programming, particularly through the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, but also through the Brownfields Opportunity Area, local waterfront revitalization program, smart growth planning and zoning, as well as our newer program, the not just the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, but also a program that was launched just last year by the governor to support smaller communities in New York Forward. Before I expound, let me also provide a little bit of an overview of the Downtown Revitalization for those of you who are not aware of the program. The Downtown Revitalization Initiative was launched to accelerate and bolster the revitalization of downtowns and neighborhoods in all 10 regions of the state to serve as centers of activity and catalysts for increased local investments. Led by the Department of State, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative communities benefit from partnerships with and coordinated technical assistance provided by our partners from New York State Homes and Community Renewal, Empire State Development, and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA. The Downtown Revitalization Initiative also represents an unprecedented and innovative plan and act strategy, which couples strategic planning with immediate implementation dollars. To date, the DRI has awarded a total of $700 million to 69 communities in its 6 rounds and supported the creation of well over 3,000 new housing units. As part of last year's budget, Governor Hochul announced the new $100 million New York Forward program, which builds on the success of the DRI and expands its benefits to more communities across the state. The innovative new program, which received an additional $100 million in funding in this year's enacted budget, supports a more equitable downtown recovery for New York's smaller and rural communities, with a focus on hamlets and villages. To date, New York Forward has awarded a total of $100 million to 24 communities in its very first round, and was announced this past budget round with another $200 million in available funding. The state has now invested in total $1 billion within these two programs. The immigrant and refugee populations in our downtowns provide an extra layer of diversity, both cultural and experiential, giving the multitude of places they've emigrated from and the trying circumstances that they've endured to settle here. Bringing new people, cultures, experiences, and ideas are invaluable to a thriving and innovative downtown. I'm so glad we have Mayor Palmieri on to talk about that. Today, we're also underscoring the tremendous mutually supportive overlap between our downtown revitalization efforts and the work of our Office of New Americans in resettling immigrants and refugees. Refugees and immigrants revitalize communities organically, just by their presence, their work ethic, cultural diversity, entrepreneurialism, and many of the same ways that the DRI and New York Forward accomplish their goals programmatic and intentionally. They repopulate downtowns, start small businesses, improve vacant and underutilized properties, opening ethnic restaurants and contributing to the regional economic development, which Laura will expand on these themes later. The DRI accomplishes these same outcomes through the projects we fund and the additional investments that are leveraged from those projects and the momentum, excitement, and attractiveness generated by the revitalization process itself. Today, you're going to hear about Utica's experience, a case study in integrating downtown vibrancy and immigrant refugees resettlement, and a paragon of diversity and inclusiveness in the DRI program. Theirs is a story so inspirational and emotionally moving that a documentary film was produced about it, Utica, The Last Refuge, featuring a couple of our distinguished panels here today. Our Utica DRI is impressive on several levels. The projects they've chosen, many of which have already been completed, including the expansion of the center and ONA-supported Refugee Immigrant Opportunity Center, the way those projects synergize with one another and help to achieve the community's holistic vision for its downtown. And the way that the city mayor Palmieri, in particular, as the co-chair of the DRI and the LPC, the local planning committee, have embraced refugees and immigrants as an essential part of this community's resurgence. We are seeing the potential to expand this formula for downtown revitalization in other very diverse DRIs, such as Syracuse and Buffalo. And moving forward, through webinars and discussions like the one today, we are learning how to further enhance the DRI and other community planning and development programs at the Department of State to include the new American population. They say that if you're not at the dinner table, then you're on the menu. Well, Utica invited Ona to the dinner table, where they helped shape, prepare, and deliver the meal. And that is the vision, goals, strategies, and projects that form Utica DRI. I'll close by thanking our partners at New York State EDC for hosting this webinar. This is not a one-time collaboration, but rather a continuation of a programmatic and policy partnership that is helping enhance the economic development outcomes of the DRI and New York Forward and many of the governor's other programs and policies. And indeed, some of their members in the IDAs have served on our DRI's local planning committees and several DRIs, including Utica. I'm really proud of today's conversation. We've been talking about it for quite a while. I'm glad we were able to pull this one together. And I really do look forward to seeing how we can continue not only these partnerships, but also enhancing and elevating the great outcomes that can happen when we really truly are working together and seeing through our shared visions together. And now I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Laura Gonzalez Murphy. She is the Executive Director for the Office of New Americans at the Department of State and a friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And I love the reference to the meal. I really do, because really it's through food, often that we feel welcome and that we feel comfortable. So good afternoon, everybody, with that reference. And thank you very much, Ryan, Paul, and Keisha, for your support to our New Americans and for convening us here today. I also very much appreciate the leadership and support from our Secretary of State, Robert Rodriguez, to facilitate the work that we do at the Office for New Americans. And again, welcome and good afternoon, everybody. Immigrants, as we know, play an enormously important role in the New York State's economy, representing over 1 in every 5 New Yorkers. So pretty much about 23% of the overall population and a similarly large share of gross state product. Extraordinarily diverse and robust immigrant communities help make New York what it is today. And as such, it is really a pleasure to engage in this webinar with colleagues who have worked so closely with the Office for New Americans in various projects that offer New Americans the tools necessary to integrate, to feel at home, and with our New York State Department of State colleagues as well. It's great to be together. While they will share more about the direct role of our New Americans are engaging in later on in the city of Utica, for example, in some of our providers, I would really like to take this opportunity to emphasize how the New Americans come to our society with many skills that inform projects that transform our environment in so many ways, including the physical environment of our downtowns in ways that benefit current and future generations. New York's immigrants represent 32.5% of our entrepreneurs. That's about 280,000 or more of them, with 7.34 billion in total business income and over 130 billion in spending power. So as we can see, they revitalize our every interactions with our surroundings in many ways, economically, culturally, and socially. Our communities, as they work towards realizing their American dream, and as they strive to achieve their American dream, ONA meaning the Office for New Americans, has the important task and mission of welcoming them by supporting them with those tools to engage their skills and bolster their contributions. Today's webinar, as Keisha mentioned and Brian mentioned as well, is highlighting Welcoming Week, which celebrates, it goes from September 8th to the 17th this year, and we will hear a little bit more about it. But I'd like to highlight that it's an example of how New York State government has recognized, so the webinar itself, the importance revitalizing role that New Americans have and continue to have in the history of our nation. Through Welcoming Week, there's diverse organizations, individuals, in communities like us here today, come together to build strong connections and identify collaborative paths that and I'm going to steal a little bit of Welcoming America's words, affirm the importance of welcoming and inclusive places. So as communities become more diverse, their institutions do as well. And diverse institutions like those present here are important to helping immigrants thrive while simultaneously creating globally engaged local community. And I think we all benefit from that. So New York's recognition, though, of the revitalizing value that New Americans and the importance of the state coming together with local actors has actually been institutionalized with the creation 10 years ago of the Office for New Americans, a very first of its kind in the nation. An office that provides services by funding those that know best how to reach and work with the New Americans, local community-based organizations, CBOs and not-for-profits. A partnership that has, I'm very proud to say, has provided support to over 700,000 New Americans through a variety of those welcoming tools, which are English classes, immigration legal support, as basic as assisting preparing to the naturalization exam, but also accessing developmental disability services, mental health support, and through our professional development programming, which you'll hear a little bit later, a few examples from Zach, such as KenCode and professional pathways. All of this, again, is provided through a network of trusted community-based organizations, such as the Center, Welcoming America, Interfirst Work. The key word there is trusted partners for the community. They feel welcomed by them. So before handing it over to our next presenter, though, I would like to highlight a particular program that our Office for New Americans has launched recently, which connects New Americans to local and state resources and elevates their voice, immigrant community voices. It's called Civic Leadership Program. The latter being something because we've realized how important it is to empower the individual through their voice, to know that they do not have to have a fear to plunge into the area. For example, of our main topic today, investment, revitalizing, engaging in the community, and taking, a big jump into revitalizing and engaging their skills, which really our American system can be so complicated. So they need that voice. They need to be heard and also to be able to contribute to their community. This program was developed in collaboration with Welcoming America, which is here today again. And it was launched in 2023, so this year, as a pilot. And today we've had over 20 graduates across different sites in New York State. Graduates that one day we may learn have started a business, ran for office, heard their voice, and were not so afraid of reaching out to local government, for example, right? And in some way, we may see that later on, they have impacted our downtowns. The Civic Leadership Program has created a curriculum, which over the course of 7 modules, participants bring questions and problems they see in their community and discuss how to address these problems. The modules are built towards participants identifying a specific problem they see in their community, and together they tackle that project to how to address that problem. Participants use the knowledge of the United States government system, relations developed in the early part of the modules to work together to find those solutions that I've mentioned and to achieve the project. The Civic Leadership Program connects immigrants to local government institutions, from city council to the buildings department, and or to chambers of commerce, for example, to help them achieve that project. So again, it lifts their voices and strengthens their participation with their community. This program is particularly important to community planning and development, especially the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, as we seek to involve more New Americans in the DRI strategic planning process. I would be really remiss if I did not highlight a couple of other of New York's efforts to provide support for the success of our newcomers, including recognizing the importance of New York's language access law, which took effect July 2022. New York has been a trendsetter in the area, having implemented a language access executive order as far back as 2011. But that executive order has now become a law, requiring all executive state agencies to translate vital documents into at least the top 12 languages of individuals with limited proficiency in English. And that law also created the second Office of Language Access in the nation, second to Hawaii. We are very proud of the policies that New York has implemented to welcome immigrants and refugees and serve as a gateway for their integration into the fabric of New York State life. In New York, immigrants can apply for driver's licenses or get state aid to attend CUNY or SUNY colleges without regard to immigration status. And I highlight these because they're important to foster their ability to contribute to revitalization of our downtowns and our community life in general. We all benefit of that. When we walk down to our downtowns, we see the vibrancy of the difference in the cultures, of their difference in like the food that Keisha mentioned, right? So with that being said, I think it's particularly proud for the office to have the engagement today during Welcoming Week and pass it on today to hear more about the specific projects that we have. So without further ado, I will also pass it on to Mayor of Utica, a very special city with integration, as Keisha mentioned, that we really always like to visit. I personally love to feel the refugee vibrancy of that community, to Mayor Robert Palmetti. So I'll pass it on to you now. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I like the introduction of the food because that is one of the things we're noted for, is our great food restaurants and our eateries and diversity. And let me just drop back a little bit, because initially we're saying experts. I certainly am not an expert. I am certainly a product of this great city. And I think that's, in order to know where we are today, we have to go back from the past. And I think our success has been, if we look maybe 100 years ago, when the Italians, the Polish, the Germans, Irish were all coming to this great area of Utica, New York, they had a very difficult time fitting in. And I think when you go into our present, I think that makes it much easier for our immigrants and our refugee population coming into a very warm and giving community. And my hat goes off to our people, because when I took office, just as a backdrop, this city was bankrupt. We are at the verge of bankruptcy. We were downgraded by all three of the agencies. Our fund balance was a negative $15,000, and we had to roll up our sleeves. And in rolling up our sleeves, that meant making sure everyone felt that they were coming to the table. And that's what we have done. We've embraced the refugees. We've embraced what we've had. If not for some of our refugees and our immigrants, some of our parts of our city of Utica with the Bosnian population would never be where it was. Our Burmese, the Karen, they have really let a fire onto the fact of not only feeling welcome into our great city, but reestablish some of these areas that at one point, as I said, were either the Italian section, the Polish, German, and they have taken inroad of that. Our Latino population has exploded. And that's because, again, it's very warm, giving community, but also for economic development. And we talk about the DRI. It's very important that whether it be a national company, a regional company, or a local company, they want to feel welcome. And when you're looking into an area that you're going to be putting in millions of dollars, first thing these national companies do will go out into the neighborhoods, into the areas, to see what type of feelings that they're going to get. When they're going into our community, they feel that they're going to be able to bring their workforce into a community that's very welcoming and giving. So we've been very lucky at this point, with a lot of hard work, to get some of these national companies, whether it be Wolfspeed, Bass Pro Shop, any of our major, they come in and they do their due diligence, and they are absolutely, am I still on here? Because I'm saying.
Yes, you are. You're there.
So they look at this. When we looked at the DRI, we looked at our downtown area, and we talked about our restaurants, International Boulevard. If you go into our city, whether you're looking for Latino food, Bosnian food, German, the Irish Culture Center, any type of the venues you're looking for, I think Utica, New York offers probably second to New York City of getting a palette of different diversities of the palette of food. We have incorporated into our Liberty Ball Park, which is right on Genesee Street, with our DRI funding, that now this will be a refugee populations with our murals of the different ethnic populations, our flags, our wayfinding. We're looking at even within the city hall, we have used that financing that We now embrace our lighting when we have a Burmese flag raising at night. It is the colors of their flag. We've had over the last year or so, roughly 25 different venues of flag raising. Our schools are roughly 41 populations. And in order to attract, as I said, more people, we have now really have looked at the population within the city. If you want your city to grow, you have to reflect the population. If you come into City Hall, we have, whether it be Burmese, Karen, Latino, Bosnian, Russian, they're able to come into our city, and the workforce that we currently have, that's what we generate. And once you have that, they feel much more at home dealing with people that speak their language and are accepting. So as the city continues to grow, every step that we look at, our park, which is in our downtown region, is now going to be a reflection of our very diverse population. We'll have bocce, volleyball, we'll have pickleball, we'll have all the venues. Our soccer fields have grown immensely because that has been, quite frankly, with the Karen, the Burmese, that has been the #1 venue of attracting people feeling that they're at home. So our system at City Hall and City is really embracing the economic development that the immigrants, hardworking, family-oriented, that have brought us. And it's our future because we've learned from our past. And, before I kind of kick it off to Shelley, the center has been such a strong component. You can't do this alone. And in doing this, we have had great relationships with the state. We've had great relationships with Shelley that foster the relationship that we have to communicate to the refugees. It's very difficult at times when they come in from a third world country and understanding the laws and being accepted into a population. We've outreach with our Utica Police Department that actually are able to communicate where they're not offended or they're not afraid, but have the same dialect so they understand that they are accepted. And the diversity within our Utica Police Department and our fire department has brought us to a level where, quite frankly, we're noted as a very warm and giving community because that's who we are. As I said, 41 different dialects in our schools, 9 different languages that are actually spoken at City Hall. We actually believe in what we're doing, and without the refugee population and our immigrants, the city would not be prospering where we are today. As I said, we were a negative $15,000 of our fund balance. I can report to you today, we're at roughly $14.5 million. And that's because people are enjoying living in a city where they feel and they can see this is their home. As we said from the beginning, everyone eats at the table at Utica. We are very diverse, very giving, and I'm very proud to be a small part of a great relationship that we have with Shelley. And at this point, let me introduce a great friend of ours, the executive director of the center, Shelley Callahan.
Thank you, Mayor Palmieri. I consider you a great friend as well. I want to just talk a little bit about the history of the center in Utica. The center was incorporated in 1981, but started in 1979. And over the course of the last 40 plus years, has resettled over 17,000 refugees into the city of Utica, which currently I think has a population that's not quite 65,000 or somewhere around there. So we are a very diverse, small city, and our diversity is diverse. The center itself has resettled folks from over 40 different countries, and there's multiple language in many of those countries. So, and that's just refugees. We also have secondary migrants that have come in by the thousands over the years, and those are refugees that were resettled to other parts of the US that hear about Utica or that want to join community in Utica and come here, and then other immigrants. And so this city is very diverse. And I think one of the latest census data that I looked at said over 30% of the households in Utica speak a language other than English at home. So that's pretty incredible, I think, for a city this size. And so this center has really been the gateway through which many of those folks come in. And we have been supported all along the way by Utica in different ways, and by the Mohawk Valley and the community here. And in 2006, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees actually came to Utica to do an article for their magazine. And they were so inspired by what they saw in Utica back in 2006 that they dedicated the entire magazine to Utica. They titled it "The Town That Loves Refugees." And that magazine really did put Utica on the map nationally, and maybe even more internationally at that time. And so a lot of folks, when they would meet us, and we had lots of press inquiries about, what makes Utica so special? Why are you the town that loves refugees? And it was always a little bit hard to capture. People would ask me and I would say, it's the people, it's the elected officials, it's, the fact that this city was built by immigrants back at the turn of the century and is now being rebuilt by refugees and immigrants. That's the economic revitalization that we see all around us. And part of the story is there was incredible population decline out of this city in the 80s and 90s. We were in danger of going below 50,000 in terms of population. And so to have this vehicle to bring population into the city, and not just population, people that were happy to be here, that could envision this as their home, that wanted to invest their talents, their hopes, their dreams into a community that lots of other people were looking to leave, who didn't see opportunity here. So these folks, these refugees, these immigrants came here and they really rebuilt entire neighborhoods in this city. And a lot of times people talk about sweat equity. They put everything they had into rebuilding neighborhoods that had fallen to ruin, or housing that nobody else would think to refurbish. And the city was actually very active at that point in making sure that refugees could afford to buy these properties. There was lots of innovative programming and things happening in Utica that made this a win-win for everybody. But back to that, what makes Utica so special is I start to think about, I think it was 2017, 2018, that I was invited to serve on the Regional Economic Development Council. And that was not something that any of my colleagues across the state, or definitely across the country, had anything that they could compare to that. So it wasn't just that, Utica was, open to this happening. Utica and the Mohawk Valley has really been involved and made a space for us at the table because they recognize that we are an economic engine. And that led to the center, also, I can't remember exactly when, but we applied for DRI funding and we were able to purchase a building for the first time ever, renovate it, and now we're building a large workforce development suite downstairs. And so, it's just interesting because a lot of conversations will talk about refugees and immigrants. They're a drain, they're taking public assistance, they're taking our jobs, they get special this or that. Lots of unfounded but very pervasive dialogue that we often find ourselves trying to fight. And really, the Mohawk Valley and Utica were like, absolutely not true. And we've brought these folks into the economic development world, and there's a seat at the table, and there's a way for us to be heard that really is unique and special. So that is one of the ways when people ask me what makes Utica special, I highlight that. And then larger picture, there's New York State, which does a whole lot of things right, I think, certainly comparatively with lots of other states for refugees and immigrants. And the Office for New Americans and all the programs that has brought to this center is just one of the ways that happens. Back in the early days, refugee resettlement is funded very specifically through grants and contracts that serve very particular populations. And a lot of times we could only serve refugees, but not immigrants, or certain refugees, but not those folks. And the Office for New Americans has really been a way for us to serve all the populations that we are serving and to offer programming that makes sense, and to professionalize services. We now have navigators and other folks that are out attending other meetings. They're at the table, on other things that gets us at the table in lots of other ways. And it has been game changing. And so one of the things I will say is, the ability to have the community really invest in us, and for us to be able to show and turn that investment back around and say, look at all we've done. We do over 400 job placements every year, and we're going to grow that. We have so many training programs, and now we're able to help refugees and immigrants get access to training programs that exist because we have this investment from the community, because we have this beautiful building, because we look and can act and are staffed like a professional entity. It has just made a world of difference. And we have grown in the last 3 years from less than 20 staff to about 50. And programming is just through the roof. A lot of that is workforce development and other entrepreneurship and other, community-based growth things. And none of that really would have been possible without the things that have happened to us, certainly without the DRI. That has just been an enormous game changer. And so I am just so grateful to the mayor, to other electeds, to New York State, to ONA for recognizing what refugee resettlement and what immigrants and refugees bring, which is community growth, community building, economic opportunity, revitalization, all the things that maybe folks weren't talking about. So it is, for me, it has just been certainly professionally just, I would not have foreseen this 15 years ago when I started, I don't think. So I am just grateful to the vision of everybody, of the city, of the mayor, who has been a great friend to refugees and immigrants in the center from the day he was elected, and to our county, our state, to everybody who invests in these programs, because you can clearly see that they have been impactful, not only for the refugees and immigrants, but for the entire community. So gratitude. And with that, I am going to pass it along to Olivia Hyback.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you so much. And the best practice examples from Utica are truly inspiring. And thank you all for having me today. Good afternoon. My name is Olivia Hyback, and I serve as the Northeast Regional Manager with Welcoming America. I'll share briefly about the work of Welcoming America before touching on immigrant economic inclusion and downtown revitalization more specifically. Welcoming America is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that leads a movement of inclusive communities becoming more prosperous by ensuring everyone belongs. We believe that all people, including immigrants, are valued contributors and vital to the success of our communities and our shared future. Welcoming America also manages a welcoming network comprised of over 300 nonprofits and local governments across the country. The Welcoming Network is both a network and a movement, driven by the conviction that communities make better decisions when residents of all backgrounds, identities, and perspectives are meaningfully engaged. As the Northeast Regional Manager with Welcoming America, I have the absolute privilege of working with communities across the Northeast of the United States, including New Yorkers like yourself. And for many of the communities I work with who are experiencing population decline or population stagnation, questions that frequently come up are questions of how do we attract and retain new residents? How do we attract new business owners? How do we revitalize our downtowns? At Welcoming America, we believe that immigrant economic inclusion is a critical part of any local strategy for growth. Many communities recognize that refugee and immigrant residents, in addition to being valued neighbors and civic leaders, represent economic growth as new homeowners, taxpayers, business owners, workers, and consumers. At the same time, like many other residents, new Americans can encounter challenges along the way that prevent them from using those talents. As they search for a job, start a business, or purchase a new home, some may run into issues around limited credit history, lack of professional or personal networks in the United States, or limited work history in the formal economy. They may also experience barriers in accessing capital or lack information about regulations and financial systems. However, communities such as yours can build an ecosystem of support to facilitate inclusion in local economies. One thing I hate as a webinar attendee is when someone comes to tell me about all the things I could and should be doing in my community, but doesn't tell me at all how to achieve that. Welcoming America has created programming to provide technical assistance to communities wishing to build welcoming economies. Our Welcoming Economy program in its current iteration acts as a webinar series and a technical expert coaching program. And it walks participants from Welcoming Economies 101 to supporting immigrant business owners to career assistance for skilled immigrants and everything in between. We also have programming that focuses more broadly on multi-sector strategic planning, like our Rural Welcoming Initiative, working specifically with cities whose population is under 50,000. These programs often act as a catalyst for local economic development agencies, chambers of commerce, downtown development organizations, or community foundations to commit to supporting welcoming work and developing robust economic inclusion infrastructure. Some of you may also be familiar with our Certified Welcoming Program, which recognizes economic development as one of 7 pillar framework areas. Certified Welcoming is a formal designation for cities and counties that have created policies and programs reflecting the values and commitment to immigrant inclusion. This program assesses cities and county governments on their efforts to include and welcome immigrants in all areas of civic, social, and economic life. Our economic development framework specifically assesses a community on their commitment to providing workforce and economic development infrastructure. And our auditing team asks to see evidence of programming around supporting immigrant business owners and starting, sustaining, and developing their businesses and procuring capital. Engagement on the part of the Chamber of Commerce or other economic development agencies in supporting immigrant economic inclusion. And programming that addresses barriers to obtaining local government procurement and contracting opportunities. There's a lot of other indicators in that framework area, but I wanted to highlight a few. And I will note, for those of you who are as competitive as I am, that there are currently 18 certified welcoming cities and counties across the country, but there's none in New York State, and there's already 4 in Pennsylvania. So we really need all of you to make up that deficit. And if you're really quick, you could be the first in the state to have a certified welcoming city. The downtown revitalization impact of embracing and supporting immigrant entrepreneurs, specifically, and immigrant economic inclusion more broadly, has a strong evidence-based, data-driven rationale behind it. Refugees and immigrants accounted for almost 50% of overall growth in business ownership over the last 25 years. And in New York, immigrant entrepreneurs owned 32.5% of businesses, although comprising only 22.4% of the population. I'll kind of wrap up my remarks by saying the next time you do strategic planning processing for your downtown revitalization initiatives, or the next time you do visioning for your equity and inclusion planning, consider the critical role of your immigrant residents in that work. Ask trusted connectors like the ethnic chamber, refugee resettlement agencies, private sponsorship orgs, ethnic media outlets, immigrant business owners, and faith groups to participate in ways that make sense. One of the most impactful tips I've ever heard about strategic planning was the idea that equitable access should be built into your planning process from the first moment, not bolted on after the fact. So if you're at a moment in time when those downtown revitalization initiative plans are being created, now's the time to take a critical look towards immigrant economic inclusion. I know I'm coming up on time, so I'll pass it on to Zachary, but I appreciate all of you and thank you for your work.
You're still on mute, Zach.
Okay, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you once again because this is the second time that I'm being involved in the Downtown Revitalization Initiative conversation, and it's my pleasure to be here. So it's my understanding that revitalization is all about reawakening our communities to the possibilities of the future by drawing lessons from what has been done in the past and realizing that the new avenues that provides us. As a non-for-profit organization, Interfaith Works is currently leveraging on its capacity to organize and to partner with different stakeholders in our communities to ensure we are providing and enabling an environment that has the capacity to affirm each person's dignity and to ensure that our immigrants and new Americans have been given the opportunity that is geared towards the prosperity of New York State. We are fully utilizing the capacity we have and through the help of the state. And in this case, for the new Americans that is directed by Dr. Laura Gonzalez, we are now in a better position to serve our immigrants and refugees, especially the professionals who are coming in our communities. And we bore the responsibility to address areas where dreams have been crushed, dreams of immigrants and refugees. And so we realized that the DRI and the projects such as the Professional Pathways Program has the capacity and is the catalyst in the revitalization efforts of our community. We at Interfaith and also in collaboration with the state, we are here to dispel where despair is. And all this is in the spirit of revitalizing hopes and dreams that have been robbed for many years. And we want to be at the forefront of developing the belief that we as a community of immigrants and refugees have a brighter future and we share in the prosperity of the United States. We are here to untangle the unjust systems and advocating for policies that serve our interests and overcome systematic structures that were meant to rob us the future and that we deserve, that is brighter and filled with happiness. And I believe this is embedded in the United States Constitution. This is what has been there in the past. Of course, we have, at least when we go to our cities, we see historical features in our midst that they speak to our generation that we once had it together. And we are well able to dream again and reimagine a future with new possibilities. In the case of immigrants and refugees, the notion that was when they come to the United States, they have to start all over again. We are providing the professional development capacity that will allow them to see themselves in positions or even find jobs in places where really affirm their dignity and even recognize their professional capacity. And so, courtesy of the policy changes within the state level, we as an agency, we have been able to receive enormous level of support from the Office of New Americans and to be able to just be there on the ground and help immigrants and refugees, professional immigrants and refugees to find hope and a future in this space. And we see this initiative that is being instigated by the state. It's taking into consideration the voice of our people, really trying to address the need that are there in our communities and how well we can address these needs and in turn empower these individuals to form part and parcel of the economic development that is taking place in our midst. So that's all I have to share for now because revitalization initiative is all about the people. So we have to include the people. And even as we are having new investments that are being taking place in our communities, we have to ensure that we create that enabling environment that even immigrants and refugees will take advantage and see themselves prosper in this space. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll send it back to Ryan.
Okay. Well, actually, this is Shelby Schneider. I'm the Deputy Director of the New York State EDC. Thank you all for such wonderful presentations. I'm here to moderate the Q&A. And if you do have any questions for the panelists, we encourage you to put that in either the chat feature or the Q&A section on the bottom of the screen. But we do have one question from Dennis Oki. How do you maintain unity and diversity without ethnic, cultural, and religious fractions? Would anyone like to take that? Zach, I see you, you want to unmute? Zachary?
Of course, one thing is just we have to create an environment that appreciates everyone beliefs and understanding, and try to move away from seeing ourselves as divided, but what brings us together, what is common in our midst, and trying to work towards that. Because if we focus on our division, on what divides us, then we are not going to propel whatever notions we have that are meant to improve our well-being. So just moving away from what divides us and coming together by emphasizing on what brings us together.
Right. You know, Mayor, as a community leader and elected official, would you like to possibly take?
You want me to take that question?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of easy to really say, we engage, you build bridges, and when you build the bridges, you make sure that everyone's, going back and forth on that bridge together. We have had marches, interfaith marches from all different denominations. We have had events where we have had, whether it be a basketball event that we're trying to recruit, but we would bring the interfaith with us. I just think it replicates what we are as a city. And I don't know if we're unique or we're just a little bit louder than anybody else, but we all have heartbeats. We all bleed the same. We all want the same thing. We all have family values. And I think from the top all the way bottom, that's what we portray, is the fact that we want people to be safe in their neighborhoods. I do a quality sweep each Wednesday for 12 years, over 1,000 miles. And I'm able to bring my department heads out of City Hall into our neighborhoods so that the neighborhoods are able to see, it could be the commissioner of DPW, commissioner of codes. They're able to talk to these people. And when they start seeing these people that look like them and talk like them, then the barriers are dropped. So I just think that it's reaching out to within your community and being who you are. As I keep on saying, we're a very warm and giving community, but we've been like this for years and years and years. And I just think that there are the world is so much different at this point. You come to Utica and you do feel differently. We have a world-class Boilermaker, and people come from all countries. And when they come here and they'll say, I just can't believe the city is such a warm, welcoming community. It's just who we have been. We build bridges, and our bridges are really what our growth has been. We couldn't do it without the refugee population, the immigrant population, and being who we are. As I said, people want to invest into our communities, into our neighborhoods. And I think we are a reflection of who the city is a very, very warm heart.
I just
And-
want to add a little bit. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Shelby.
No, you please go ahead, Keisha.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit onto it. The challenges that the mayor talked about years ago is not unique to Utica. And I think what has been unique in some ways is, that sense of we're warming and giving is who we are, doesn't actually have that boundary, right? I think ultimately we all want the same things for our families. We all want the same good quality of schools. We all really basically want the same things. And that's what I think we're really love about the Utica DRI, is that it gave us an opportunity to really demonstrate how, if other mayors and city and town, supervisors have an area, have a secondary downtown that they, haven't been able to quite get to, even though that's not necessarily for the DRI, thinking even from a New York Forward perspective, a much smaller downtown, give the process an opportunity, even the pre-application process that requires a little bit of engagement with the community, give that process an opportunity to help serve as that conduit of looking at what a shared vision is for the larger community, for that specific area, for the multiple and diverse stakeholders of that area and the neighboring areas. Give that process an opportunity to really sort of look and see how a shared vision actually ends up being pretty darn shared. and being able to put those projects in place in areas that are sometimes really difficult to bring financial investment or aren't quite on the priority list, even though it has been for Mayor Palmieri, like give that process an opportunity. We would love to see more DRI and New York Forward applications coming in where they are partnering with their new immigrant populations, with organizations that ONA has been working with other Welcoming America's sort of organizations. That's really important because we are pushing out these programs to help revitalize communities throughout the state. And that does, especially in major cities where they do have a larger population of new Americans coming in, like those are the areas that we want to make sure are catching the wind of not just revitalization, but a revitalization that is authentic to that area. Working with your assets is working with your people. So we really do hope that part of the goal of this webinar is also a hope that out into the future, we start to see more and more applications for downtowns in areas where we can really help to elevate and enhance the network of services, as well as all the wonderful attributes that come with truly being a welcoming city.
Yeah. Well,
If I could just add a little
yeah,
bit, I should just add to that, because, you know, it's easy to talk about something because people are listening. It's more important when they see the actions being taken place. And when we talked about the DRI, we brought in everyone. We brought in the refugees, the immigrants, and so forth. And one of the things they were looking for is a specific place along Genesee Street, which is our main thoroughfare, that they could actually say represents who they are. Our Liberty Park is going to be a tribute to our immigrants and our population. That is something that's importantly that we want to be profound. So when people come here and they come to this park, they can see the not only the welcoming that we are, but you're going to see a global mosaic of all the countries of flags, and it makes them feel that, you know, this is one of their ideas, and the city of Utica is putting it forth. So sometimes we all say a lot of different things, and we're talking, but at the end of the day, people want results, and I think we give the results because we listen to the people of our city, and when you listen to the people, good things happening. And at this point, our refugee population, I can't speak enough for them, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are today.
that's wonderful. While we have you on tools and services, especially when it relates to the DRI, we have one question specifically directed to you, Mayor, that asks, and I think Keisha could probably dial into this too as it relates to other communities around the state, but can you elaborate on wayfinding and lighting as tools for creating a more welcoming community for refugees and immigrants? And I welcome anyone else who'd like to chime in as well.
Well, absolutely. Wayfinding, a lot of the DRI that we were putting in is going to be the wayfinding. In our ARPA funding is lights that we put in that will have the replication of a celebrating at City Hall. Not only the flags being up, but the colors that reflect the country that we're attributing to. Everything we've done navigating down our downtown area is going to be wayfinding with signs, really culturally for our restaurants that are so diverse. So I think I go back to what I just got done saying. If you're able to show and be able to set an example, then they become embedded into this is their community. And once someone's embedded into the community, it continues to grow, whether it be in the neighborhoods, whether it be downtown, whether it be our historic park, Chancellor Park, really is our first park that was with the Italians. And now it's going to be a multicultural facility that will have replicated all of the diversity that the city has to offer.
Great. Does anyone else would anyone else like to talk about wayfinding before we move on?
Yeah, I'll just say, for the DRI projects, they all are identified by the community, right? And so that's again why it's so important to have a diversity of voices in those meetings to highlight how different types of projects would benefit in different ways. So we do get quite a few wayfinding ones, but are they in all of the languages that might be most supportive, especially if there's trending in a direction where there's a growing population? A lot of that does get fed. We do obviously have our planning team that help to support and supplement a lot of that information. We do see that sort of time and time again, and it's more valuable and more meaningful in some areas as opposed to others.
Great. I'd like to move on quickly because we're running short on time, but this is from Kathleen Braco. And this is, how do you get around the fact that refugees can't legally work for the first 6 months until they get a social security number and employment authorization? And Shelley, would you have, thank you.
Sure. So refugees can work the day they arrive incident to their refugee status in the US, but practically they can't get hired before they get a social security card and a number, which takes about 30, sometimes 40 days. There are other folks that come in that do have work authorization issues. So humanitarian parolees, the Ukrainians that have recently arrived in the last couple of years, and the Afghan humanitarian parolees, things are a little bit different for them. And then immigrants, there's a little bit of a difference there. But refugees can work the day they arrive incident to their refugee status.
Excellent. This is a big question, and I'd like to probably, lightning round this with everyone, but how do you think this work can most effectively intersect with the migrant crisis that's happening in New York City and really across the state of New York? This is so timely of a topic. Shelley, while I have you right there.
So, I think that this is a big issue now, and it's only going to get bigger with climate change. I think that we really have to start thinking a lot bigger scale with refugees and migrant crises. And I think we also have to recognize, and Utica and a lot of cities across, if you look across New York State, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Albany, refugees and immigrants have brought us just a lot of economic development, a lot of good things. So I think that we need to change the conversation, recognize that these are human beings. This is, everybody's on this earth. We all have a right to be here, to live, to have dreams, to grow a family. And so how do we put policies in place that make sense and that resources are put in place to support migration? What we're seeing is population migration. So how are we as a society going to find humane answers to this? And right now we're just kicking the can down the road. And, when you talk about these busloads of migrants that have ended up at New York City and in the news lately that they're going to come to other parts of New York State, and without really any recognition to the fact that these are human beings whose whole worlds have been upended, and people don't leave like that unless there's just no other options. So how do we create humane programs and answers to this? And I think we can do it. And I think that we have to do it. And I think that there is a moral imperative to do it. So I don't think you just say, no, we don't have the resources, or we can't. No, that's not the answer. I do think we all have to work together and provide people with access to resources and a plan, and then get things moving. And I think that we needed to do this 10 years ago. So the clock is against us. We have to get together and do this now. So I don't know if that gives you any concrete answers, but I will also just say this, welcome is a verb. You got to do the work. This is going to take work, but it's work that's, I can't think of work that's more worthwhile. This is what we need to do.
But what's most important, and the reason why we're here today, is that there are models for success. And although we have a crisis in New York City, and it's very timely right now in the news, you've been running this marathon for decades as a community, and we are looking at models for success. So would anyone else like to weigh in on that before I move quickly into accessibility? Olivia, please.
Sure. So I will say that absolutely, building on Shelley's comment, the time to build welcoming infrastructure is now. I'll point to an example. I manage a portion of the country. So one of my cities that I work with is in Ohio. And they called me, they said, Chicago seems like it's under a lot of stress. Do you have a contact at the mayor's office in Chicago? We'd like to invite some of those people to come live here. Because they had built the welcoming infrastructure. They had the legal infrastructure. They had the housing infrastructure. They had the employment opportunities. And we were able, it was a successful connection. And so if you're looking at what can we do to prepare our communities to be more able to welcome successfully, the welcoming standard is a great guide. Utica is a great example. We have a 5-part toolkit that talks about building welcoming infrastructure for emergency humanitarian relief. Start today. Don't wait till tomorrow, because we are going to see massive population migration. It's already happening.
Okay. And I want to move quickly into this next question from Martha. And I don't want to say your last name because I don't want to hurt it. It's about accessibility, really, and meeting people where they are, because you could have all the infrastructure in the world, but if people aren't really engaging. So how do we get immigrant and refugee communities to participate in local government, attend public hearings, join committees, attend town board meetings? And this is really a cultural nuance, it sounds like, of accessibility. Zachary, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was trying to figure out how to put my hand up, but I'll let Zachary go. He's a major example.
Oh, carry on, Ms. Lauer, please.
I'll give, I'll pass it on to you, Zachary, after an example quickly, but I wanted to say that, that it's really a very important question, because that's one of the issues that, when I was speaking earlier, I mentioned how important it is to assist them and support them about the value of their voice, right? Realizing that they can. And a lot when the community first arrives to the US, or we're first coming in, we're afraid, right? Of how much can we actually say, because we don't understand. So a lot of the breaching the engagement factor has a lot to do with that, with realizing that we're in a welcoming society and taking away that fear of the unknown. And that's one of the roles that the Office for New Americans has been holding and following for the past 10 years. That's why we work so closely funding not-for-profits directly and starting with them, because they're the ones at the local level. We've engaged, like Shelley said, through navigators to make sure that they're part of every aspect, not just in a school, but definitely in a school, of course, in a PTA meeting. In being civically engaged does not mean only voting, right? The goal, yes, that is our achievement, to be able to get that citizenship, but there's a path to that process. And integration means feeling familiar with the community. And it's also a responsibility of the community as well, and of the immigrant. So breaching that a relationship, that empowerment, that giving that voice, has been one of the things that ONA has done and worked closely with the not-for-profits when to engage across the state, and with, like Shelley also mentioned, with all new arrivals, not only the refugees, but irrespective of the status, to foment that and empower them. And one project that I mentioned earlier that we're working with Welcoming America very closely is that civic project. We've developed that curriculum that the individuals themselves can take on and identify how they find their voice. So participating in the local government and even in the libraries. Some of our projects engaged families that literally felt, oh, I can actually go to the library and ask for things, and ask even for an interpreter. And they submitted comments to the library itself of their community of what they could do to change so that they could come in and feel more comfortable. As basic as that, another one in New York City with American families with developmental disabilities literally learned about who their representatives were, and that they realized that they actually were living near them, and started breaking and breaching the fear to come talk to their representatives about the issues as families with developmental disabilities. So empowering them through that curriculum is just one very practical example that we've created. But in itself, for the past 10 years, through the programs that Zachary, that Shelley have mentioned, that's what we're trying to foster. Giving them the voice to participate in the school, in town halls, Chamber of Commerce's. And yes, hopefully, that's one of the things that through efforts like this, we can expand on and collaborate more, so that they're participating even in planning boards, right?
Right.
And investigating and revitalizing.
And
That's
before we move to Zachary, and I'd like to add this as an addendum to the question, what is a reasonable time frame for someone, a new American, to be part of your community, to feel like they can start having that active engagement and participation? What's a reasonable time frame? Because I assume it's not like flipping a switch, giving
It is
someone
not,
information.
yeah. Yeah, that would be a really difficult question to answer. I think it has a lot to do with even the level of English that they have, right? And that's where also our engagement is to assist them with tools to be able to learn English. But it often has to do with how many children you have and the ability to go outside. So it would be hard to put a time frame to that. It can take a few years, but it's also the personality of someone too that can quickly feel welcome and feel out and more outgoing. Our role is to try to foment and facilitate that, you know, and possibly make it as sooner than later to happen. And a lot of it, yes, it's very time specific, and also recognizing much about the trauma that many of them come with. So there's a lot of different issues, and that's one of the things that hopefully with the office, and as I said, for the 10 years that we've been around, we're breaching some of those time limitations.
It's great.
If I could just
Zachary?
add to that a little bit, the city administration should reflect the population. And that's where you build the bridges. So what your city is, it's great to have the city out there, but if it's not part of your public safety, your police, your fire, DPW, your codes, inner works, your planning boards, your zoning boards, that's where we have been very successful. And that's why I think people feel very welcomed here, because when they come to the codes department, there's someone there that fully understands what they're saying. They can interpret, they could build that bridge. The police department, we had our first female Burmese, and it takes a little time, but you have to encourage it. And I go back to, you know, walking the streets on a Wednesday and building the relationship with our residents. And it's very, very important that your city reflects who you are.
Great. So, Zachary?
I'll just echo what the mayor and also the executive directors just shared here. It's for sure, it's making these individuals realize that they're visionaries, architects, and also planners of their own future. So just getting them involved and being represented, being representative of their own future, you know, enabling them and empowering them.
We have, we're running really close over time, but I just wanted to take one more question. Can you expand on any successes due to the affordability of Utica? But I'd say the affordability of any community, more so as it relates to potential DRI barriers for new Americans. And I think this also ties into credit, which there's another credit question. How do you help immigrants with credit access? So access to capital in total. Does anyone want to weigh in here?
I can talk a little bit. Yeah, Utica, back in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, Utica was very affordable. I alluded to some of the programming that Utica had in place, selling properties really for a song to refugees, primarily, but also immigrants that were willing to invest kind of sweat equity and that sort of thing into it. But a couple things about the refugee program, just the way it's built. Refugees arrive here owing their airfare to back to the voluntary agency that has brought them here. So one of and they get the bills start coming 6 months post arrivals. And one of the thoughts there is that it allows refugees to start to build their credit. That's just kind of one of the strange little things nobody knows about the refugee resettlement program that I think is a little forward thinking. But affordability for everybody, I think, is quickly evaporating. I feel like housing and the cost of everything has gone up for everybody. So it has definitely been a pretty incredible struggle the last 2 years just to keep up with rising costs of housing, household goods, foods for our folks, even when they get relatively well-paying jobs. I think our mean starting wage is over $18 for the folks that come through our employment department. And lots of them are getting jobs that pay more than that. But the cost of everything has gone up. So it's a struggle. We find ourselves having to cover more and more gaps with innovative funding and donors and things like that.
Okay. I want to answer one final question. We've gotten a few of these. People have asked if they could get a summary of the presentation. At the beginning of the webinar, we let everyone know if you registered for this webinar with your email address, and we had many of those. What we are going to do, this recorded webinar as well as all of the websites that we have added in the chat feature and the reference material to answer some of your questions. We are going to send an email as a follow-up to ensure that you have all of these. And the websites also have contact information within each respective agency. But, you know, that's a great way for us to communicate. We've clearly started a wonderful conversation here. And I just like to thank everyone who participated. Obviously, like I said, this is a very, very important conversation. And I just wanted to give you all just a last minute chance to give us your final thoughts. So, Shelley, since I have you on my screen, would you please start?
Final thoughts. You know, I guess I would just say, welcome is a verb. As I said before, there's a lot of work to be done. But I've been doing this since 2006, and I've met the most incredible people. And I definitely have seen that there are best practices, certainly in Utica, but in other places. So I think that any mechanism by which we can easily share best practices, stories of success, and get people together who really have worked on this for a while, because again, I think the future is we are going to have a lot more work to do with regard to migration and refugee and immigrant affairs. So, you know, I hope that people continue to think about investing in the programs that serve that serve this mission, because I think it's just going to continue to grow.
Thank you, Shelley. Laura?
I think, of course, yes. I mean, echoing what Shelley said, you know, about the welcoming, we need to act in action, and it's leading by example. But to me, it's also on a very personal level. I think engaging and raising the voice that I mentioned of our communities is so important. And a lot of it has to do with not just the welcoming that New York gives, and it's really a privilege to be in New York State because of all that we offer already. However, I want everybody to keep in mind that a big reason often for the lack of participation in the question that was earlier asked is because of the fear of the unknown, right? And that's one of the things that I think we need to connect with individuals. I think Mayor Palmieri made that reference to earlier. It's really important about being out there, reaching, sharing, and knowing and communicating with any individual, really, with everybody, kind of not reaching that fear that they might have and that we also have about who that individual is, what country they come from. It's a two-way street.
Thank you so much. Zachary?
For me, I just want to thank New York State together with the Office for New Americans for just ensuring that you create this environment where we can be able to also highlight some of the things that we're doing in the community and vice versa. And also being in this space, it just enables us to showcase some of the things that we are doing and some of the things that can be replicated all across New York State, and creating an environment that is not just welcoming, but where people will feel a sense of belonging. That is a key factor. And also, even as we create the structures, we have to also find individuals who have the desire to implement these initiatives that are life transforming, people who believe in it.
Thank you so much. Olivia.
Sure, thank you. First and foremost, I really would like to see a city or county in New York certified. So please, let's move forward on getting someone certified welcoming. But thank you, Mayor Palmieri. All right, I saw that. I will take that as interest. In all seriousness, though, thank you for having me. And I want to recognize that immigrant inclusion work is important and economically impactful, and also can be tiring and hard some days. Lean on partners, find a trusted network, rely on others who do the work, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people across the country who have been doing this work for decades, and they want to support your communities to grow and thrive. So connect with us, connect with our network. Welcoming America exists to support all of you.
Mayor Palmieri?
I mean, everyone has articulated and I'm not going to elaborate. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present our city, Utica. I am very proud of it. I'm very proud of the relationship that I have with Shelley. And I would just kind of end this with the fact that come and visit us and eat at our table. We'd love to have you here. We love to show you what we have to offer. We love you to learn from our experiences of being a very warm and giving community. And I'm very proud of our people, and I'm proud of where we've come and how we embrace the immigrants and how the immigrants embrace us.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And Keisha.
I was just trying to respond to one of the questions that are out there. I'll do that really quickly. You know, I think I think my big takeaway is here at the Department of State, and in particular, the Office for Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure, we really want to help communities plan for opportunity. So sometimes, yes, there are crises, but let's turn that really into planning intentionally for opportunity. And that's going to come by way of this. We also talked about how this is, you know, how this will only continue, especially when it comes to climate change. And so, you know, that is something that our office is constantly looking for. But again, we want to help to plan for opportunity. When we want to help communities rebuild their neighborhoods so that they're filling in a lot of vacant properties or other underutilized spaces with, you know, laughter, love, and opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do with the DRI and New York Forward. We, you know, pointing out, I again love Mayor Palmieri and talking about the way that he talks about, you know, the assets of the community are the community members, and that community membership grows when people come into your community. So accepting that for what it is and building on that as an asset really is what also creates these hallmarks of what makes your community unique. And so, you know, it really is a win when we're working towards that together and creating a space for everybody who calls that place home. People who call a place home love their home. And if you really want to have a thriving downtown and community, make sure everybody who's walking through that downtown is calling that place home. So, you know, again, really want to encourage organizations to reach out to their local officials, if that's who's mainly on the line, as opposed to local officials, and say, hey, we have this commercial corridor, we have housing above it, we have this sort of network, there's a bus system that almost reaches here but doesn't quite reach here. We could probably pull together some really great projects and put forward you know, the beginning of a vision of what this area could be through the DRI New York Forward. We also have the Brownfield Opportunity Area program and other things. So I would just encourage folks to look at our website, but that's what we are trying to do here. And so it's really wonderful to be a part of this discussion and finally have it. Because again, we've really wanted to see more and more communities come in a place that we feel like we're really helping to create new opportunity, building with existing assets, as we always do throughout the state.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. If we didn't get to your questions when we send out that the follow-up email, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure that you connect with the right folks. But thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and have a great day.
Thank you.